This is Cross-Side, and I am Bryant, your host. And this evening, I have Brother Ronald Clay joining us, and we'll be discussing the topic of race. But before we dive in and he introduces himself, let me read a quote to you from Rosa Parks. She says, and I quote, "I believe there is only one race, the human race." So with that, let me have Ronald Clay, who's joining us this evening, briefly introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, bro.
I am Ronald Clay. I'm from Chicago. Currently live in Chicago, and I am an MDiv student at Moody Bible Institute, Moody Theological Seminary. So I'm just glad to be here, and I also am a part of the human race.
Nice. That's good, man. Well, thanks for joining me this evening to record this episode on the topic of race. It is an important topic, and it's also a sensitive one, and one that definitely is worth discussing. So I'm glad to be discussing this topic with you. So, but before we dive in,
I agree that you said that it's an important topic, but I don't think it's an important topic. I think it's a topic that it's been made of importance, but it is something that is relevant because people made it relevant. So, let's get into it. Let's see what's going on.
For sure, yeah. So let's first start out by defining what is race. Let's kick it off from there. What is race?
You want me to define it? Well, it's defined as a major grouping into which humankind is considered. It's divided basic physical characteristics of shared ancestry, right? So colors, creeds, things that matter. So that's pretty much what race is, as it's defined in the dictionary, the true definition of what race is.
Now, do you agree with that definition, or would you define it differently?
Yeah, for the most part. The Bible defines man as mankind, as man. And that's how he looks at man. He looks at man as man. We have split up into different groupings within mankind that has been divisive. Even in its definition, it says to be divided on, right? So it is a divisive topic because in its groupings, it separates within the human race, different races. So for the most part, in its definition, yes, it's a divisive groupings. So yeah, major grouping divisions. So I do agree with that definition.
Okay. And so why is race such like a hot topic? And if it's not that important of a topic, but it's been made such in our culture and society, especially nowadays, why is that the case? Why is this such a hot topic?
Well, race is centuries old, but it wasn't until the 19th century that attempts to systemize racial divisions were made, right? In the 19th century, that's when you have Karl Marx, right? And then you have the birth of a lot of things and people who come along and want to make their race superior by making others inferior. So over periods of time, it has become a topic that has been sensitive to some races because of how they were treated by other races, right? And it's become an emotional issue. It's an emotional topic, of which, with genetically, there isn't much difference between races, right? I think that things are that we are learned behaviors within races. People think it's a black thing or a white thing, and it's learned cultural behavior over time that divides how we act and how we see things. Culture has a big factor that people tend to make racial, right? So why you act black, right? Why do you act white? When actuality, it's learned behavior over a period of time that we have adopted or uh, taken in and owned as a racial thing. So, because of certain things, in my opinion, based on research and me knowing history that the little history that I know, it's race is nothing more than what it is. It's a distraction, right? And from the overall bigger picture, and I just think that that's essentially why it's the topic right now is what it is. It's an emotional topic that people gravitate to one side or the other.
Well, that's good. What do you think of Charles Darwin's role in all of this? Because I think in his book, he basically introduces or develops a concept of race, and it comes or originates primarily from a Darwinian worldview, right? Where it's not like one human race, but now we're separated into different races that are distinct in light of different features, whatever they may be, right? Like some of the things you mentioned earlier. So what are your thoughts on that? How familiar are you with that historically? What are your thoughts on that, and what role do you think that plays into all of this?
Well, what you're talking about is like critical theory, right? So it's the philosophical approach to culture, literature, and things of that matter, historical and ideologies and structures which produce a constraint, right? So um, critical theory is a Marxist ideology. So when you put critical race theory, right, so that means that race is the constraint and race is the cause of all of the problems. So it's part of a critical theory on Marxist views, but the critical race theory is an added factor. Race being an added factor, to say that race is the roots and the cause of all ills, right? And we need to look at race as being a factor of how. So Marxism is Marx. Marx, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
back.
Marx's views is how do you say it's attractive, right? Because people are looking at factors to blame why they are where they are, right? And that gives them an avenue and an open door to blame others or factors for where they are and their ills and oppressions and the reason why they're oppressed. That's why it's attractive, right? So there are Marx in himself. If you understand who he was as a man, he never worked. Right? He lived off of others, and he had a finger to point at why he was where he was. He didn't have many friends, didn't hold on to any relationships, and it was always somebody else to live off of. It was always somebody else to blame for the ills, and which produces his theory. And makes it attractive for those people who gravitate to Marx's views, live and act a certain way, right? It's either beneficial for themselves or at the cost and expense of others, right? And I think that Marxism is attractive to those who are looking to blame and a reason for their ills and oppression.
Would you say it's fair to say that uh, both Charles Darwin and Karl Marx, you can see the Darwinian and the Marxist hands playing a role in the shaping of modern day conception of race? from their evolutionary perspective, their philosophical perspective, their view of humanity, and this whole idea of survival of the fittest, of oppression, and other like concepts. I guess you could say, and at least from my perspective, I see the influence. I see they're both their hands to some degree shaping and molding the conception of race that we have today, that people embrace and have made popular today.
Yeah,
Whether
and that's
knowing,
the thing.
yeah.
Right. That's the thing. People have made it popular. Because in its time, it wasn't a popular feat. It wasn't a popular idea. And it wasn't until later on where it picked up um, momentum and people started to use that as a way for power and oppression. But all in all, yeah, their ideas have shaped a whole movement now, right? And they are pushing it because, again, it's an attractive ideology. And just the way the approach of it pointing a finger and looking to that as why it's to blame the social ills on where we are or where the country is or where the individual is goes against Christ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Christ views. And we know that man is broken and are looking for healing and a way to fill a void that only Christ can fill. And why is that important? This is just one thing that man is looking to in this day and time, in this cultural context, as a way to fill a void or to find healing that nothing else has. Right. And it's just over time. It was over the centuries. It was something. It was always something in the word. When you read the Corinthians, the letter, it was something else. It was something that man was looking for. And this is not new. The ideologies is probably 100 years old or so, but the concept of men searching for a way to fill a void is not new.
Do
It's
you
nothing
think
new under the sun.
that's good? That's good. Do you think that what they're searching for, at least to some extent, is identity? So they're finding their identity in race because they're not finding it in Christ. Do you think that's part of the whole issue?
Finding their identity in Christ, they've been told, and people, like I said, I think there's learned behavior, right? And I think that even in America, growing up a man of color, you're told black is beautiful. I'm black and I'm proud, right? So we're told at a young age that we're being oppressed because of our color, but because of our color, we are to have pride, right? And this is where your pride is. This is where your identity is. So when somebody attacks that, we go on a defensive. So it's just a natural reaction.
Yep.
And the one thing about that is that being black, because that has been our identity, because of the history of slavery, of Jim Crow, the civil rights era, these are the fights that we had to fight, and it was because of color. But the whole issue is during slavery, there was a different goal, and it wasn't, and even Jim Crow, it was a different goal in mind, not to be superior because we're black, right? And it wasn't until after the civil rights movement when we started to, during the civil rights movement, I'm black and I'm proud, that it wasn't like, okay, we're one people in one country going for one goal with the opportunity of what America presents. We're separate because we've come from a different background. We want to remain separate. And even though you've oppressed me because of my color, that oppression is no longer there. But that emotion of that oppression that I've never had, that my ancestors did, we're holding on to. And that identity is something that has been injured, or they feel is being injured. And again, it's a distraction, right? It's just a distraction.
So, I mean, that's good. And so what is the biggest challenge then we face when discussing race today, when facing it on?
The challenge is discussing it. Is in itself is the challenge.
Yeah.
right? If it's not discussed, then it won't be. It's no longer presented as a challenge.
How should we then approach the issue of race? How should we approach it? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
How should we approach it? The issue of race. Don't discuss it. Don't make it the issue, the end all, right? If it's not a topic of discussion, then it becomes irrelevant, right? If it's not something that is a factor, then there's no attention that needs to be paid to it. And so if we look at people's character and how they are and how they act and how they move and integrity, then it'll supersede the race, right? Now, to say that racism is dead is ignorant, because there are people who hold on to it on both ends, right? There are black racists, which I don't understand how people don't think blacks are not racist, but blacks are racist, whites are racist, and you can't. If race is an issue, then it's not only a distraction, then it's in itself a problem, and not necessarily because of how people act. It's the thinking and beliefs behind it that makes it relevant, of which I think we need to ignore and move past.
And but what if someone brings it up and they want to discuss it, and they give you pushback on that? What would you say to them? How would you address
in
the
what
issue?
context though? In what context? Hey, let's talk about race. Or it's like, let me give you an example, right? So my daughter, who didn't make the volleyball team, she said white supremacy is real.
Oh man.
I said, wait a minute. I already know what's going on in the schools, public schools. So it's up to us as parents to help curtail or to help them to see past what the limitations of their experience are. So right away, because there was a white coach, right, then the reason why she didn't make it is because the white coach wanted to suppress or not let her on the team. So I asked her, is there anybody of color on the team? She told me, yeah. So I'm like, how can it be race? Well, she was good. Well, there you go, right? So why is it always race the first thing? So she wanted the talk about it, but it was up to me to divert her attention to what was actually the facts, as opposed to her emotion, as opposed to what people are saying is the issue. So she wanted to talk about it. She brought it up as that being the issue, as opposed to what the real issue was. You need to tighten your game up, because if you were that good, she wouldn't be able to hold you off that team, right? And then, are you working at what you're supposed to be working at? You haven't worked out, you gained weight, you haven't done certain things, you haven't been practicing. You want to expect to get on this team. Now you have a sense of entitlement, right? And that's another issue that is attached with race in America, right? That's an American thing. So you feel entitled, you should have made it based on what merit, right? Because you're black or you're Mexican. Why do you think you should have made that? Because you're good? You think you're good? I mean, come on. So in that way, when people bring up race, then it's always, if race is not the issue, then the truth is there, and it's up to us to find out what that truth is, right? So I'll never forget, like, somebody wanted to we was watching this news clip, and Maxine Waters, the great Maxine Waters, right? She's talking about Donald Trump is a racist, and I'm sitting in a room full of people. They're like, yeah, yeah, and he's queuing with QAnon and the Proud Boys and the racist comments and the racist ways in his past. And when she was done talking, I'm like, wow, she gave him a big compliment. And they were like, what do you mean? She was right. I'm like, come on. So Donald Trump is a racist. And the whole room basically like, yeah. I said, okay, so you're making this about race. So Donald Trump is racist. And he was like, yeah. They were like, yeah. Okay, so why didn't he say that if she was racist, what policies as a politician did he put forth that prohibited you from progressing in your life? If he's racist as a politician, history in America would suggest that politicians will put forth racist policies, laws, mandates, or executive orders, correct? So if this is his way, would you say as a politician, his laws, mandates, executive orders, or mandates were racist and prohibited you in any way? Silence. Silence, right? So in saying that she didn't talk about any laws, any facts, any truths to support her theories as him being a politician. So if he's a racist politician, then his policies would reflect that. And no one who said anything could suggest and look at his policies as being racist. Actually, his races were helpful to so many people of color in so many ways that debunks their theory or views of race being an issue. So that's what I do. If somebody brings it up, automatically there's an emotion. Most times in 2021, there's an emotional factor behind that, right? My grandfather, who rest his soul, was man of God. He died. He was born in 1925. He could tell me about certain things. He was born in Jim Crow. He was born in Mississippi. He could tell me about certain things and issues that have made things hard coming from Mississippi, coming up to the north, right? He could talk about that. But my cousins and other people who are, wet behind the ears, ain't really a silver spoon in their mouth, ain't picked one cotton in nobody's field, right? Didn't have to sit in back of nobody's bus and living it up. The American dream and opportunities that are afforded them can't talk about that experience in 2021. So the contexts are different. Emotions are high. Facts are irrelevant. Truth is avoided. And it's up to us as Christians to seek out truth and avoid the emotional argument.
Good stuff, man. Well done, Daddy Ronald Clay, and potential future politician. You running for office or something, man?
Man, we gotta get these clowns out of office, man. You gotta get them out.
Well, I hope you run for office one day. So,
man, I would have to run it in disguise, man. They wouldn't like what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I bet. So, how has this whole issue of race affected you personally?
It's giving me a headache.
Okay,
that's how it's affected me. It's giving me a headache.
Man.
Now, not to say that I haven't experienced racist people.
Sure.
Like I was born in Inglewood in Chicago. My father moved us out to the suburbs, right? And at the time when we moved out to the suburbs, it was before the flux of the city, before they tore down the projects and moved Section 8 to the south suburbs. We were only the only Black family on the block, right? And I remember cops pulling us over, right, and taking my father out of the car, and he didn't even do anything, right? I remember our windows getting busted because of people didn't like the fact that we moved in and the people whose house we moved into, right? And and we were getting harassed by some Mexicans that used to live around the corner, not just with white people, right? So racism can come from all different, sides.
All over.
Bro, it wasn't until I got to prison where I watched Telemundo and when I watched what's the other?
Univision.
Yeah, Univision, right? So I noticed that most of the people that are on the TV shows and the talk show hosts are lighter skinned Latinos. Not the Cubanos, not the Dominicans, right? Not the Southern Mexicans, right? It's light skinned. So there, and then and not Puerto Ricans, the darker, the Latinos. And it was somebody who put me on, who was Latino that I was in prison with, who put me on to like, yeah, it's racism in the Latino culture as well, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Yes, my ex-wife was Mexican. She looked white, And when I came, she brought me home. It was a problem.
Yeah.
People, because, even in certain cultures now, bro, man, I'm gonna just put it out there. A lot of the students who come from international and want to get married, they look to the white folks to marry. They ain't trying to marry black people. Come on now. Come on. It's the truth. So it's not, but see, it's there. It's present, right?
Yeah.
If one of these Chinese or a Latina or Indian brought me home to their parents, come on. It wouldn't go well.
Come on, Ronald.
It wouldn't go well at all, bro. It wouldn't. Nope. I'm just saying. No, and I've noticed that, right? But somebody told me that and brought it to me. Listen, I'm 40 years old. I've seen a lot. And I've been exposed to a lot. So when I came here, it's like, okay, I'm just seeing different contexts in a different setting. And this is Moody Bible Institute. These are people, men and women of God, that come from cultures that has influences of,
right.
certain races. It is what it is.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Oh man. So what about society and race? You talk a little bit about how it's affected you, but also how do you see it in society around you? How's it affecting society, and where do you think we're headed? And what are some?
I think race is used as a tool for something, a gender bigger than what?
Political?
Of course. Power.
Yeah.
What good would it serve to oppress a group of people when you can oppress all people? They didn't put a mask mandate on Black people. They put a mask mandate on everybody, right? And people thinking about it as color, like COVID is attacking only Black people. Come on, man. The things that, again, it gives me a headache, bro. Society, and they don't see the distraction. And you got these good scholarly preachers, right, in the pulpit preaching certain things, and they can't even see the distraction. They can't even see what's really going on out there. And they're biting, eating, they drinking the Kool-Aid, and they being distracted as well. And it's like, what are you looking at? Are you reading the Bible? Is the Spirit that wrote the Bible and the author of the Bible that is in you giving you discernment about what's really going on? Do you not know the end result of what's going on? Who's in control? Who's trying to gain control? How the devil is busy? What is he
race
doing?
hustling?
He is trying to divide. He is trying to kill. He come to kill, steal, kill, and destroy. And how is he doing that? He's causing distractions that is not supposed to be infiltrated in the church, infiltrated in the pulpit. It's supposed to be out there in society. I can handle it in the world. I'm not surprised that the world is seeing certain things. I'm not surprised that the world is going through certain things. I'm not surprised that the world is looking at things a certain way. What blows me is that it's in the church and the leaders are leading us down this path. And it's even at Moody, man. Like, come on, man. It's like they drinking the Kool-Aid, pertaining curtail to the culture. You cowered into the culture as opposed to understanding where we are, what's going on, and combating what the world is saying, instead of going along with that.
I think Kool-Aid might be a little too obvious, so I think it's just in the water, man. It's so subtle that you can't even see it. Everybody's drinking it a little bit. So,
I must be immune to it because I drink a lot of water, and I'm not. It ain't affecting me.
Yeah, so man, you're good.
I haven't drunk Kool-Aid in a long time, so
you got some racial immunity there. So that's good. Man, so you bring it up, as it relates to the church. So what are your thoughts on that? Any other additional thoughts on that? What do you recommend? What should the church be doing? Speak to the preachers, speak to the church members, speak to the church, man.
What should we be doing besides taking a lot of aspirin? Stick to the biblical truths, right? In a world that says there is no absolute truth, we need to stick to truth. Where the world is moving further and further away from God's truth and what he's established, even in marriage and how they define marriage, stick to the truth. And how they define sexes, There's no men anymore. There's no women anymore, right? Let's stick to the truth, right? That men is in control of climate when clearly in Job and even in Genesis, right? God is in control of the weather in all things. Stick to the truth. Where they use the rainbow as a symbol of one thing, but God has used it as a symbol of something else, as a promise, right? That he won't destroy it by water anymore, right? So this climate change that said it's going to flood the earth, the rainbow that they actually using for one thing, they're ignoring what the real issue, what it's supposed to really stand for, right? Hashtag take the rainbow back. Let's stick to the truth, right? Absolute truth is what we're supposed to be guided by. And when we see a distraction, we're supposed to understand it, have discernment, pray about how to avoid it or to combat it. And we know what the solution is. First of all, we know what the problem is. Let's get that, right? Now, you got pastors out there who are saying that the problem is something other than sin, right? So if we're not getting to the root of it, but we sticking to the surface, if you miss that, bro, one of my favorite shows, right? I'm gonna end it with this, was House, right? House was my favorite. I told somebody this. House was my favorite, one of my favorite shows, right? One of the shows I binged on, right? And the one thing about House and how he approached illness and how trying to diagnose it, he would guess, he would think the symptoms of something was a tell of what the problem is. So he would treat those symptoms. But the thing is, you have symptoms that are shared by different diseases. So what would happen is he would give them certain medicines that they should react to and get better, but oftentimes, he'd never get it on the first try, right? Oftentimes he's misdiagnosing the problem, so he is giving the wrong solution, right? And that's what's going on now, right? So they are misdiagnosing the problem. They're ignoring what the real problem is and what's going on in the church and in society, that you're coming up with the wrong solutions. And when chaos happens because you misdiagnosed it, then they're going to keep reeling and going after and attacking what they think the problem is, when all along they're wasting time. The problem is sin. The solution is Christ. And it's up to the Spirit, of which is giving you discernment, to tell you how to approach it so that you can properly give them the right solution, right? Whether you shoot it, whether you ingest it, whether you snort it, however you ingest the solution, it's not one size fit all. The one size fit all solution, but how you approach it and how you give it, how you disciple that, how you evangelize, is different. And it's different context, different people, different situations, different, but it's the same solution. So I just hope that and pray that the church gets back to, or sticks to, what understanding what the problem is, so they can properly administer the right solution.
Good, man. Good stuff. I mean, you kind of already did, but I'm going to just follow up and ask again if you could do us a favor of, just like you were to wrap all this up, summarize it as it relates to this topic of race from our discussion. If you were to put it in a nutshell, what would be the biggest takeaway you want the audience, those listening, to take from this?
I'm gonna sum it up in 4 words. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right.
In Dr. Ronald House's words, go ahead.
All right. I'm gonna just tell you, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Hey, you remember back in the day, like, right? I remember my brother, we were told not to drink Kool-Aid past a certain time and like wait till dinner, right? So my brother would sneak, and I ain't drink no Kool-Aid, right? denying, but his lips red as all get up, right? His lips red, lying. Like,
Oh
bro,
man, busted.
we can tell you drunk the Kool-Aid, bro. Just stop like, I ain't drinking no Kool-Aid, bro. Your lips is red. Your lips is like bright
That's
red.
good. That's good.
So you can tell who's drunk the Kool-Aid. They can deny it all they want. Oh, I stand on truth, bro. Your lips red, right? your fingertips red, right? Stop it. We can tell. I can see it. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid. Good. Anybody who's drunk the Kool-Aid, I just shake my head and keep it moving. Like if they want to hear truth, but they high off the Kool-Aid, they can't. That sugar, they can't come down, right? So don't drink the Kool-Aid, bro. That's
nice.
Don't drink.
That's good, man. So on the flip side, what should they be drinking then?
Living water. Living water, right? And that's exactly again the solution, bro. So Christ says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. These different ways, there's no your truth, right? And there is eternal life. There is abundant life, right? And that is who Christ says he is the way to that. I am the way, the truth, and the life. So that is a definitive statement. He is God. There is no other way. There is no other truth. He is absolute truth. And he is life. And there are a lot of people walking around here dead. The walking dead is what I call them, right? The walking dead. And it's so important. It is so important that we allow the Spirit to open our eyes, to open our mind, to open our understanding, so that we may be aware of what's going on, not to participate, but to stand firm on God's absolute truth, to either combat it, to expose it for what it is, and while exposing it for what it is, show them with the light that is in us what that is, so that we can be used as a vessel, so they can be attracted to that light, so that we can bring them to Christ.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Well put. I appreciate all that. Thank you for your time, RC. That's been good, man. So yeah, man, just thanks again for joining me on this episode. Appreciate it. It's been a good talk. Hopefully we could talk some more about this at some other time. And just want to thank you for joining us again. And thank you for those of you who are listening. This has been Cross-Side, and we're glad you joined us this evening. Have a good night. Peace.
Peace. Thank you.